So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what drives them forwards. Today, I'm delighted to have with us Kurt Wagner, our Director of Logical. So Kurt, thank you so much and welcome to coming on the podcast today. If you could introduce yourself, your company, and how you help your clients, that would be great.
Yeah, lovely. And yeah, thanks for having us, Chris, as well. Always happy to hopefully contribute to a good bit of content and speak to some businesses in the area. Yeah, my name's Kurt. I've been with Logical now for it's 12 years this year, straight out of uni, and fell into recruitment and business. We're a sales and technology recruitment company. So we've got offices in the UK, in Leeds, out in Melbourne, Australia, on the west coast of the States, and we've just set up now in Dubai very, very recently. So yeah, a lot of commercial placements, typically permanent placements we work with, specifically within large technology organizations, and the same applying for technical vacancies that we work as well across software development and various other technical capacities. So yeah, that's the front end of the business. And then the back end of the business, we actually have set up an investment fund for small businesses in the region. So we're more of an incubator as well as a tech recruitment firm now.
Wonderful! What a great thing to do. Oh, and I'd love to talk more about that with you. And I know obviously you're growing and diversifying as we speak. And what about how about yourself? What was, you said you started from college, but you've been a bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why Logical for you?
Yeah, well, it was a complete fluke, to be honest with you, Chris. I couldn't find a job at the time. I'd just studied a sports science degree at what now is Leeds Beckett, formerly Leeds Metropolitan, and I love sport. Big into football. I used to play hockey for Leeds as well, and I wanted to be strength and conditioning, so I had a passion for sport on that side. A lot of that work at the time was unpaid. It was voluntary, and as a 21, 22-year-old lad with a student debt, I need to pay the bills. And I was living in a house share at the time with the guys that you live with at uni, and one of them had an interview for a recruitment company and said, you know what, get it on your CV and see what happens. And the next day I got a call, and it was Jill, who was my business partner now, who at the time was a director in the UK business, and the rest's history. That's 12 years ago. So it probably took me a good year to realise what I was into, with regards to career prospects. But never looked back since. So absolutely
wonderful.
Love it.
What a great story. There's so many people have really interesting stories about how, you said a bit of luck, a bit of accident. That often happens, and it's but I guess, the football quote is Liverpool always used to say they make their own luck. And we create it, I guess. And so looking back over the last 2 or 3 years, and I know you said you diversified, and obviously the fund sounds fascinating. What changes have you seen, and what are the biggest challenges that you've had to overcome?
Two things really in the market from a client side, and to kind of give you a bit of context, where I'd say probably 60% of our placements were commercial roles back in sort of early 2020 time. The tap was turned off. We had almost overnight, really, when the first lockdown came into play in March. It was just chaos, really, with a lot of companies just struggling to figure out how they were going to adapt, really. So we had a really challenging 2020, and there were times where it was really backs to the wall, looking and thinking, right, how we're going to get through the next month. We survived. We managed to trade through it. From a candidate side, that's where the market also shifted heavily in favour of the candidate. We talk about this great resignation that we're supposed to be in the middle of right now, and it is really, really volatile. And I think the offshoot of that is that it's more important now than ever for a customer or an employer, should we say, to really roll out the red carpet as to why people would want to work for their business. Obviously, it's a two-way street. Someone has to impress a future employer, but it really is important about employer branding now to get the right candidates. So that was the sort of a few changes that we saw in the market. In terms of, I guess, how we maybe survived, it was sort of pivoting into two different areas. So we mentioned around the US business. The US market didn't really close down as the UK did. So obviously there was a lot of restrictions in place, but they are much more developed with regards to a remote working capabilities. You know, big tech firms will have people on the East Coast, West Coast. You know, they're really, it's an average day to manage quite large remote teams. So
Yes.
we really thrived from a lot of our US customers. And then obviously we talk about then the funding side of the business. So the cash our recruitment business will make, we'll then look to strategically invest that in regional business leaders who are maybe looking to grow their own business or set up a new co. We've done that now with two organizations in Leeds, one of which digital marketing firm, the other one application intelligence firm with a cybersecurity arm. Both now are employing at least 15 to 20 people in the region, and multi-million turnover businesses. So it's gone well. So yeah, that was a risk that has paid off, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. So that's just fascinating. As essentially before we started, it's great to see so many success stories in our local area, and you know, and despite the challenges we've had, rather than for many people the last 2 or 3 years have been so challenging, and yet so many businesses have found the right way to move through it and make things happen. So brilliant. So what would you say you've learned in business over this last few years?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I've definitely personally I've changed as a person. You know, we've got to condense the time in which we have to deliver on a lot of these projects, but still try to deliver the level of service that we want. You know, it's all about that kind of caveat of, well, we want to get this done now, but also we want to make sure we're doing the right job. So I think learning to be a lot more direct right from the off with a new customer is one of the most important aspects of business really now for us. We're lucky enough that we've got a lot of loyal customers, that we've got a real stable book of business that we can work with. And that allows us to be quite selective with any new customers that we bring on, not because, you know, we don't want to work with any other businesses, but we just want to make sure we set those expectations out nice and clear from the start. I think the other thing for me is just trust in the process. You know, you can sometimes as a business owner be thinking that, you know, you're doing all the right things, but it's maybe not paying off right now. And that's the wall that you've got to break through. But if you do trust in the process, then it will come good. And I think what was a challenge in 2020 and probably up to even till mid 2021, we're now seeing the fruits of that labour, you know, be realised. So yeah,
that's great. It's a great one because we tend to be, you know, business leaders tend to be quite driven, fast paced. And so it's, if we're not getting the results quick enough, it's like, all right, let's do something else. But you know, if you know it works or you've got confidence, it's that patience and persistence that's often quite key, isn't it? And you know, obviously with evidence about how things are going, but if we don't have it, we can so easily change too quickly. This, I think there was that story, the very, very old story about the miner in the Klondike gold rush of whatever it was, 18 something, and you know, he worked his claim for 18 months and didn't make anything, and finally gave up, sold it for $1, and the next guy came in, he dug 3 feet and hit the richest vein of gold that they'd seen at that point, you know. And you know, how often are we 3 feet from gold? It's balancing that with obviously the fast-paced nature we often have, and the desire to get the result quickly. Sometimes patience is the answer.
what I like about that analogy as well is I think I heard another take on that where the guy who made the most out of anyone sifting for gold was the guy who sold the equipment.
Yes,
So it's that old analogy of how do you diversify? You know, he dug for gold for some point and made some wealth, but actually he found the wealth was providing the equipment. You know, and I think that's one of the things for us, especially as a predominantly perm business. We needed to diversify at that point. We do run contractors. We have got some recurring revenue, but investing in these other companies wasn't just an external investment to get an annual reward. We are working as a cooperative with the businesses that we've set up.
Yes.
You know, so if a new client of ours would need talent, why do they need talent? Have they got a new product release? Okay, let's talk about how you're marketing that product. Okay, let's talk about how you secure that product. So it's all about evolving the offering that a business can have, but not diversifying too much from what works, because that's where your success really lies.
No, but it feels like you've addressed the market and say, what does the market need and what can we provide? And if you're, as you said, if your clients are tech businesses because they're taking tech resources and they're coming out with, why don't we provide them with other services? And it's certainly something that I learned from a guy called Sir Terry Matthews, who's very successful. He was the first Welsh billionaire. To give you an idea, he made a lot of money in sort of the microization, it's not the right word, of tech in the 80s, similar to Alan Sugar to some extent, but he's less well known, although they're more successful. But I went to an event with him, and someone asked the question, what's your secret to success in business? And he said, look, I know this sounds really simple, but I asked my customers what I wanted, and I found it from them. And it is simple, but it is great, that ability to say, well, actually, okay, people may not be wanting what this is right now, but what else might they want that we can provide, and potentially, as you say in your case, is collaborative with the things we do. So that's brilliant. So who or what would be the biggest influences in your career so far?
Oh, wow. Family, I think, is always important, and for my failings, I'm a Manchester United fan, so I always look to Sir Alex for a bit of guidance on the management front. And one of his sort of teachings was, understanding where your family came from, and making sure that you understand what did your grandparents do, how did they contribute to the world, and that what their hard work matters. Whether they were shift workers, labourers, technical people, their work was important. That's what their life contributed to us. And I think it's easy when you're in a job and you're living your life day by day, you kind of lose sight of, well, what I'm doing matters. It does make a difference either to this business or the community. So I think, from a family perspective, both my mother and father served in the emergency services. My dad was a firefighter for 30 years. My mum was a police officer. Brilliant. So I kind of look to them for hard work, as a lot of late nights, and then in work, as cheesy as it sounds, but my business partners that I work with now, they took me under my wing when I was in my early 20s and a bit wet behind the ears, as they'll both admit. And I've learned everything really from them now. So obviously we evolve, but those teachings kind of never really leave you. So yeah, it's how you're molded, isn't it, in your career? Yeah,
no, it's fascinating. You might be familiar with the High Performance podcast.
Jake Humphries, I listened to that.
Yeah, and obviously I think they've interviewed Alex Ferguson, but also I think the first one they ever did was Rio Ferdinand.
Yeah, and that's brilliant.
And just talking about the culture that Alex Ferguson created, and the work ethic, as you said, the work ethic, that he'd come from a very, very strong work ethic. It doesn't matter how talented you are; it's also about work. The ethic of always getting better. And it's brilliant. And the thing I loved the most, which resonates with a lot of successful teams. I'm a rugby man, and I've studied the All Black rugby team quite a lot.
Yeah,
and it's this culture of self-governance of the team, rather than the captain or the manager. And I know in that podcast Ferdinand talks about a new player coming on board. I can't remember who it was, and and he basically was walking off the pitch at half time, and he said, you don't walk off, you run off the pitch at half time, because if you don't run off, you ain't getting on second half.
Yeah.
And that's what we do at Man United. We run off the pitches at the half time, and it's just setting that culture and having the team setting has been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you and from whether that's from Alex Ferguson or anyone else, is on your journey, have you picked up any quotes or sayings that you live by a lot? I love to pick them up, and I'm interested if you.
Yeah, I mean, from a technology point of view, I'm a big Elon Musk fan. Who I know can be a little bit of a polarizing figure, but you know, one of the things that he's said relatively recent actually is about the future, and I think people were questioning him obviously around exploring space, where there is a number of problems that we need to sort out here, which I completely agree with. But he was saying around, well, what's the point of not waking up and looking forward to the future, you know, and having something to look forward to? We can get so bogged down in a lot of our problems, and there will be people to solve those problems, but there are also people that are explorers and people that have pushed the boundaries, and we should always have an element of that in us. And I think for me, that is something that now we have to live by. And if anything, the last 2 years has taught us is we've got to, if not now, then when, really, that we've got to try and reach out for that boundary and try and break through it into wherever that might be.
Absolutely love it. I remember it wasn't that long ago, and one of the successes they'd had with SpaceX, and he talked about his vision of putting building a community on Mars.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, for me, that's the definition of vision, because knowing he wouldn't be alive to see it, or probably wouldn't be alive to see it, because but that's the vision. It's not what's going to happen next week, next month. It's this long-term journey way past probably his personal involvement. And that's inspiring for me. That's just amazing that anyone that can think at that level for that length, that distant time, and be driven by it is quite fascinating. He's absolutely quite fascinating.
Oh yeah.
Interestingly enough, I picked up a great one yesterday, which is sort of resident to it, relevant to looking forwards, not backwards. And it's so simple, but I just love it. Don't look backwards, because you're not going in that direction.
Yeah.
It's brilliant, because it's just in its simplicity, because it's right, isn't it? We're not going backwards, we're going forward. So let's not worry too much about the past, because we're not going that way. So no, brilliant. And what you did touch on it a little bit earlier, but what have you learned about yourself in your journey, in your career?
Where do you start?
Brilliant.
I think for me, it's about being able to trust people and trust the people that you have around you. I think it's when you become an expert in a particular field, or with experience in the time in the role, I would say that through the years you get better at the process, you get better at your craft and your day-to-day work. You can sometimes be guilty of holding on to that a bit too much, and especially in a company like ours, it's recruitment is that industry. I've still got customers that I started working with 12 years ago, and you always want to hold on to that, but trusting in the people that you've got around you to maintain that culture that you've built, and actually being able to delegate a lot of that work, that to me is something that I've learned to again, trusting the process of, and those people will come through if you give them that responsibility. I think I've definitely not lost my roots. That I think we've always got to, stick to the people that we are. People will do business with you for you. That's another important one. And if they don't, then you've got to decide whether that's something that you want. You've got to try and match your values, and then always stay ambitious. Always try to look in your own time anyway for that next area that you can evolve. Brilliant.
I love all of those. They're fantastic. Interesting. You mentioned values, and one thing I've come to believe over time is that good relationships come with a match of goals. We both want to achieve the same thing, but great relationships come with a match of values. We both think the same things are important. Whether that's employees, whether it's customers, whether it's suppliers, it's that match. And if we don't match, probably over time we're going to diverge. And it's often that hard, hard discussion we might have with ourselves or even with our clients sometimes, that if we haven't got a match of values, maybe we're not the right people for them. It's a difficult one, isn't it, when you're growing, and certainly if as we've seen over the last couple of years, there's instability in the marketplace, but ultimately to serve them best and serve ourselves best, it's probably best to cut the links with some of the people that we just don't share that common culture, common values.
Yeah, absolutely. And as blunt as that sounds, that applies for anybody even within the business, even employees. And I was listening to a startup podcast the other day, and they were talking about Reed Hastings, who's the CEO of Netflix. And Reed and his head of talent created the Netflix culture deck. And that was as they were obviously going through that first big growth from paper mailing DVDs out to each other into an online streaming site. And the culture deck used to be around, we're a family, we're going to have this family environment, and everybody has got a job for life as long as your attitude's right. And they changed that over time into, we're a team. And like any good sports team, you might have the best striker in the world, but if all of a sudden the team evolves and it doesn't need a striker anymore, or that's not that person isn't doing an excellent job, but they, providing the attitude's correct, you need the people that are in the business that have to provide functionality to that business at the time. And if not, absolutely, it's right for that person to move on and find something that engages them. You don't want to hold anybody back, but as well, the team comes first.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's bang on, and that, as you said, that happens, and evolution can change. And as you say, obviously, the even someone with their attitude and be great what they do, if they don't fit, it's better for them and for us, because they won't be valued as much in that changing strategy and changing team. So for them to be valued, they're better off going to somewhere where what they do is valued now and valued in a different way. So it makes a lot of sense. So obviously, you've had a lot of success over the last few years. I love the investment you made, the incubator side. So looking forward, I guess what does the future look like? Doesn't have to be putting anyone on Mars, but what's the future like for you guys at Logical, and what challenges do you think you might be facing, if any?
Yeah, I think the challenges, which are very positive challenges, are from our own delivery side. We've got a great team at the moment, but how do we grow and deliver with the customers that we're speaking to that are wanting quite complex programs delivering over the course of the next year, and how do we deliver effectively? I think there's more activity in the VC market now than there has been in the last 5-6 years. There are more startups, never mind tech startups, in the UK and the region than there ever has been before. So there's it feels like we're coming to the end of this the COVID journey that we've been on over these last 2 years. We're starting to get to the light at the end of the tunnel there, and there seems to be a thirst for talent within all of these businesses. So how do we deliver that when for the last 2-3 years we've been used to working to quite a lean structure by design? If we'd have hired 50 people to work in our Leeds office, there would have been a lot of redundancies over that period. But we haven't. We've got a relatively mid-sized team of experts. So how do we get the right people in to deliver on those would be the main challenge for us this year, as opposed to where are we going to get the work from. But there's a lot that we're looking forward to. And I would say the first thing is putting us back on a plane somewhere and running some incentives and, getting back to where we were 3 years ago, and enjoying the work that we do and the rewards that come with it. Great.
I'm excited already. That's and thank you so much for that so far. A couple of things, just as looking further forward, but I'm interested to get your view and your advice. What would you say to anyone? What you just said makes very, very relevant. What the question? What would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Do it.
Brilliant.
Why not? Why not? We've had people who've worked for us, and I think if anything, if anything has been learned over these past 2 years, it's if you are, like I said before, when are you going to do it? If not now. We had people, somebody who worked for me for a number of years, really trusted member of the team. And I think after a couple of lockdowns, you start to reevaluate where you want to be in life, whether that's how you're going to progress in your current job or what you're going to do for the future. And she actually left the business to set up her own company within the hospitality market, funnily enough, which was a very challenging space.
Yep.
And she's absolutely flying now. And for me, that's actually a really nice thing to think, you know what, that if that's your dream, go and do it, because this is the time to do that. So yeah, I would advise people to, if you've got the right structure around you, I think the A team is important. Unless if you're on your own, then absolutely fine, trust in the business plan. But if you've got the right team of people around you, then absolutely go for it. It's the time.
Brilliant, love it. And what was the best advice you could give if you're able to go back in time and advise an 18-year-old Kurt? What might you say?
Well, this is the most difficult one for me, because I'm a firm believer that I'm where I am today through my experiences. So if I travel back in time and came into contact with myself, I'd probably say you just keep doing you, because you turn out okay. And I think that's one of the main things, that we are who we are for those reasons. And I think, keep a good circle around you. Your friends are just as important as your colleagues. And you'll grow in time. So just be yourself and trust the process.
Love it, absolutely love it. I think it's bang on. It's I feel the same myself. It's like you can look back on different choices that you make, but if you like where you are, then clearly you've made the right choices. It's and even the ones that were more painful have probably created learnings that make us who we are. So I would completely, I can totally get where you're coming from on that one. And I think it's like, if where you are is where you want to be, then you've made all the right choices in the right timescales. Somebody said the other day when asked that question was just go faster, but even that isn't necessarily the right advice for any other individual. It's sometimes I think the learning from there was, you can achieve so much, in quite relatively quick timescales and in quite relatively challenging times. But no, I agree. It's if we like where we are now, then we've made all the right choices in all the right ways.
Exactly. And don't be ashamed of the bad ones, because they're the ones that you can use to motivate yourself. The hard times will create tough people. That's typically what they say. I actually failed my third year of my degree. I had to go back and retake that. And for me, this is 12, 13 years ago now, but I still use that as a source of motivation. That feeling when you get told that you're going to have to resit the year, or actually what you and your parents have been paying for the last 3 years is down the drain. There's guilt, there's shame, there's a lot of negative feelings around that, but bottling that up and actually using that as I'm never going to feel like this again. I think a lot of people should use that in a positive way, and that can push you on to where you want to be. Brilliant.
No, that's very sound advice. It's using that as the energy to drive us forward sometimes, isn't it? And I know our founder, Brad Sugars, who's a very, very successful guy. He told me quite a long time ago that he's as successful as he is because he's made more mistakes than anybody else.
Absolutely.
And because it's the comfort with trying stuff and accepting the mistakes. And I think that's a learning that's been really useful to me is it's trying to avoid that fear of failure. Failure is not failure if we learn from it. It is actually learning. I think Nelson Mandela had a great quote of I think it was, I never fail, I either win or learn. And I think that's brilliant. Well, look, Kurt, that's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And
no problem.
I'm really keen to know, maybe we can meet again in 6-12 months to how that progression goes, especially not just with the recruitment side of the business, but the investments that you're making and how you're helping other businesses develop and grow as well. And thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Yeah, absolutely no problem, Chris. Free any time, and it's been a pleasure.
Brilliant. Thank you.